Good evening. Today is February 7th, 2026. I hope everybody's had a good day. I want to go back in time today, 60 years, 1966, when many important things happened in history and also in my life. On January 3rd, Sammy Young Jr. is shot in Tuskegee, Alabama. He was the first African American university student to be murdered due to his actions in support of civil rights. On that same day, the first acid tests were conducted at the Fillmore in San Francisco. Then on January 10th, the home of the civil rights activist Vernon Dahmer in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, was firebombed. Dahmer's family escaped, but died the next day of severe burns. The White Knights, one of the several factions of the Ku Klux Klan, their imperial wizard, Samuel Bowers, would be unsuccessfully tried for this murder before being convicted in 1998. On January the 12th, U.S. President Lyndon Baines Johnson stated the United States would stay in South Vietnam until communist aggression had ended. On that very day, Batman premiered. On January 13th, Robert C. Weaver became the first African American cabinet member appointed U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development by LBJ. And on March 8th, the Vietnam War continued. The U.S. announces it will substantially increase its number of troops in Vietnam. And on March 24th, Harper versus Virginia State Board of Elections was handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court that ruled requiring poll tax payment was unconstitutional. On March 26, demonstrations were held across the U.S. against the Vietnam War. On March 28th, Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi visited Washington, D.C. And on April 18th, 38th Academy Award ceremony hosted by Bob Hope, held in Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. Robert Wise's The Sound of Music jointly won and received the most awards and nominations, with David Lean's Dr. Zhivago respectively winning 5 and receiving 10 each. On May the 15th, tens of thousands of anti-war demonstrations again picketed the White House, then held a rally at Washington Monument. On May 16th in New York City, for the very first time, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made a public speech against the Vietnam War. On June the 6th, civil rights activist James Meredith was shot while trying to march across Mississippi. He survived. On June 13th, in Miranda versus Arizona, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that police must inform suspects of their rights before questioning them. And the plaintiff in the case was Ernesto Miranda. And they're called, Miranda rights. On June 29th, U.S. planes began bombing Hanoi and Haiphong. And on June 30th, the National Organization for Women was founded in Washington, D.C. I first heard of this organization during the fall of 1972 when some representatives came and spoke to a class I was taking at Baylor. I was a senior at the time, and the class was Marriage and the Family. I was very impressed with what these ladies had to say. And the Congress on Racial Equality was founded on the 4th of July that year, endorsed the goal of black power at a well attended convention in Baltimore. Dr. King and Roy Wilkins criticized his declaration. One of the leaders of CORE, Congress on Racial Equality, was James Farmer. I heard him speak at Baylor during the fall of 1986 when I was working on my PhD. In fact, that was my first semester in the doctoral program. On July 13th, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, better known as Hare Krishnas, was founded in New York City. On July 14th, Richard Speck murdered 8 student nurses in their Chicago dormitory. He was arrested 3 days later. Then on August 1st, sniper Charles Whitman killed 13 people and wounded 31 from atop of the University of Texas at Austin main building tower after earlier killing his wife and mother. On August 5th, Dr. King led a civil rights march in Chicago during which he was struck by a rock thrown from angry white mob. On August 16th, the House Un-American Activities Committee started investigating Americans whom they believed had aided the Viet Cong or intend to make these activities illegal. And interestingly enough, this meeting was disrupted by anti-war demonstrations, and 50 people were arrested. On August 22nd, the United Farm Workers Organizing Committee, a predecessor to the United Farm Workers of America, was organized. That's the union that was led for many years by the late great Cesar Chavez. On August 29th, the Beatles played their very last concert at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. Meanwhile, on NBC, Hullabaloo aired its last episode. And I enjoyed that show. I was always a fan of teen musical programs, including Hullabaloo and Shindig, American Bandstand, and something else, which was aired from Dallas between 1965 and 1968. On September 12th, the Monkees TV series premiered on NBC. September 19th, Timothy Leary, known as the guru of LSD, formed the spiritual group League for Spiritual Discovery. On October 2nd, Bobby Seale and Huey Newton formed the Black Panther Party. On October 15th, Lyndon Johnson signed a bill creating the U.S. Department of Transportation. On November 8th, screen actor Ronald Reagan was elected governor of California as a Republican, and in 1980 he became president of the United States. December 5th, the Supreme Court ruled in Bond versus Florida. The Georgia House of Representatives must seat the civil rights activist Julian Bond, having violated his First and 14th Amendment rights. On December 15th, Walt Disney died while producing The Jungle Book, the last animated feature under his personal supervision. On December 26th, the first Kwanzaa celebration was held by Maulana Karenga, founder of the organization U.S., a black nationalist group. And so a lot of important things happened that year. Now, what was I doing? Well, in 1966, I was living in Waco. Um, I was attending West Junior High School. I, in my autobiography that's not yet complete, I have a chapter entitled Junior High and a Change of Direction. It was on February the 7th of 1965, which was 61 years ago today. A Sunday morning, I walked the aisle at Gateway Baptist Church in Waco. Gave my hand to Pastor Noel V. Geis and publicly confessed my faith in Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. On May 2nd of 1965, Brother Geis baptized me. In On April 14th, 1966, I attended a revival at our church. And after I got home, I was sitting at the kitchen table reading my Bible. And I felt God speak to me, telling me He wanted me to preach the gospel, and I accepted. On October 26th, I delivered my first sermon at Gateway Baptist Church. It was on that occasion I preached from Psalm 29:11. The Lord will give strength unto His people. The Lord will bless His people with peace. Exactly 50 years later, I returned to that same location, 2605 Morrow. In 1966, October 26th was on a Wednesday, as it was in 2016. By 2016, Gateway Baptist Church had ceased to exist, but Brookview Community Church was meeting at that location. Pastor Larry Weaver was kind enough to allow me to come and deliver a message, again from Psalm 29:11. And there were two sisters present who had been there in 1966. We had attended Sunday school together. They were a few years younger than me. But these two sisters had came back to what they call the old gateway and were present when I delivered that sermon. By the way, Pastor Larry Weaver, like me, is now a chaplain with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice and a very fine pastor. I'm confident Brother Geis, who passed away in 1998, would be pleased with the work that Larry Weaver has done at that location. And in May of 1966, I completed the 9th grade at West Junior. And began in that fall, enrolled at Waco High School as a sophomore. My next chapter in my autobiography is called High School Years. Describes my time at Waco High from the fall of '66 until I graduated on May the 28th, 1969. One thing that I noticed when I got back to school that fall, how many of my classmates were now driving, and some had their own cars. I felt left out, and I was determined to rectify the situation. And it was during the summer of 1967 that I took driver's ed. Got my first driver's license on July 17th, 1967. It took me a while to get the restrictions removed had a learner's permit for several months, and I finally passed that, I think sometime in 1968. And it was in the spring of 1969, not too long before graduation, that I acquired my first car. And a lot of times people don't think about that, but that is a very important event in anyone's life when they get their first driver's license. I was looking to the future, and in 1967, not 1966, I began taking classes, and preparing for college, and of course, planning to study for the gospel ministry. Like many, I got kidded about being a preacher, but that was all right. Uh, every year of my life has had its good points and its bad points. Nevertheless, I give God all the praise. As the saying goes, I wouldn't take nothing for my journey. I thank God for all the experiences I had in 1966 and subsequent years. Hope everybody has a very good evening and a great day tomorrow on Sunday, February the 8th. Good night.